Her face hit the pig trough before she could scream. The hand on her neck was iron. The slop filled her lungs. She'd drowned like this 47 times in 3 years. But this was the last time. Because tomorrow a cowboy with a scar and a stuttering voice would step off a stagecoach and change everything. This is the story of how a mail-order bride outsmarted a serial killer using nothing but law books she'd read in a cellar. If this story grabs your heart, hit that subscribe button right now and follow Eleanor's journey all the way to the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you are watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Now let's begin. They say God watches over the helpless. But in Redstone Gulch, Montana, in the summer of 1881, God must have blinked. Because nobody watched over Eleanor Ruth Crawford. Not the miners who passed her house every morning. Not the women who bought eggs from her stepmother's porch. Not the reverend who preached about mercy on Sundays and looked the other way on Mondays. Eleanor was 26 years old, and she hadn't spoken her own name out loud in 3 years. Her mother-in-law, Ida, didn't allow it. Ida called her girl, or it, or nothing at all. Just a snap of fingers and a pointed finger toward whatever chore needed doing. But Eleanor had a secret. While Ida thought she was going mad in the cellar, Eleanor was reading law books, every statute, every code, every loophole in Montana territory law, and she was planning her escape. It started with a newspaper advertisement. Eleanor Ruth Crawford's knees hit the mud before she could scream. A hand, bony and iron strong, grabbed the back of her neck and shoved her face down into the pig trough. The slop filled her nose, her mouth, her lungs burning as she choked on rotten grain and filth. She clawed at the hand, but it pressed harder. "You want to eat like an animal," Ida's voice hissed above her. "Then eat." Eleanor had been drowning like this for 3 years, not in water, in silence, in a town that watched and did nothing, until the day a cowboy rode into Redstone Gulch who didn't know how to look away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start 6 weeks earlier with the part where I thought marriage to a stranger would save me. I was wrong. What saved me was learning that survival isn't one big moment. It's 1,000 small choices to keep breathing when the hand on your neck says stop. This is the story of how I found my voice, and how a man who had spent 10 years running finally learned to stand still. Helena, Montana, May 1881. The newspaper advertisement was folded so many times the paper had worn thin at the creases. Eleanor read it by candlelight in the cellar, her 7-year-old daughter asleep on a pile of grain sacks beside her. Rancher seeks companionable woman for marriage. Must be of good character. Children welcome. Write to Cole Masterson, Circle M Ranch, Redstone, Gulch, Montana Territory. Children welcome. Those 2 words were a lifeline thrown into dark water. Eleanor's hands shook as she pulled out the stub of pencil she'd hidden in her dress hem. The shaking never stopped anymore. It had started 6 months ago, subtle at first. A tremor in her fingers when she reached for things. Then her hair began falling out in clumps. Then the vomiting, the dizzy spells, the way food tasted like metal. She thought it was fear, the body's response to 3 years of Ida Puig's methodical cruelty. She didn't know yet about the arsenic. The cellar door at the top of the stairs was locked from the outside. It had been locked for 2 days. Ida had shoved a piece of bread under the door that morning, the way you'd feed a dog. Eleanor had given it to Margaret. The child needed it more. By candlelight, Eleanor wrote, "Mr. Masterson, I must be honest with you. I am not running towards something. I am running from something. My late mother-in-law made my life unbearable after my husband Samuel died in the mine collapse 3 years past. But she has since passed away, and I am free to seek a new beginning. I am 26 years old. I can read, write, and manage a household. I have a daughter, Margaret, age 7. She is a good child, quiet and obedient. If you will have us, I promise to be a good wife and a loving mother to your home." The lie sat in the center of the letter like a stone. She has since passed away. Ida Put Dawson was not dead. She was upstairs at that very moment, probably sitting in Eleanor's late husband's chair, eating supper from Eleanor's mother's china, counting the coins Eleanor had earned doing laundry for half the women in Helena. But if Eleanor wrote the truth, no rancher would invite a widow with a living mother-in-law into his home. The law was clear. Ida had guardianship papers signed by a judge. She owned Eleanor the way she owned the furniture, the house, the pigs in the pen outside. Eleanor sealed the letter with candle wax. She would find a way to mail it. She always found ways. 3 years of captivity had taught her to be patient, to wait for the small windows when Ida's attention wavered. The candle burned down to a stub. Margaret stirred in her sleep, whimpering. Eleanor pulled the child close, felt a small heartbeat against her ribs. "We're going to leave here, baby," she whispered into Margaret's hair. "I promise, we're going to leave." She'd made that promise 47 times, once for every time Ida had shoved her face into the pig trough. This time she meant it. Circle M Ranch, Redstone Gulch, same night. Cole Masterson sat on the porch of his ranch house, a hand-rolled cigarette burning between his fingers. The Montana sky stretched above him, vast and indifferent, scattered with more stars than a man could count in a lifetime. He'd tried counting them once, the night Abigail left. That was 10 years ago. He'd stopped counting after 100, stopped doing a lot of things after that. His horse Bishop, a sturdy blue roan with a white blaze, stood in the corral dozing on 3 legs. The animal was the only living thing Cole spoke to most days. Bishop didn't judge when Cole's stutter caught on certain words. Didn't care that Cole had let his wife walk out the door without fighting for her. Didn't care that Cole's 2-year-old son was somewhere in the world growing up without knowing his father's face. Cole drew on the cigarette, let smoke curl into the night air. The scar on his face pulled tight when he moved his jaw. It ran from his left temple down to his jawline, a souvenir from Shiloh. Some Confederate officer's saber had opened him up like a butchered hog. The field surgeon had stitched him without whiskey or laudanum. Cole had bitten through a leather strap and passed out from the pain. When he came home from the war in '65, Abigail had looked at the scar once and turned away. Never looked directly at it again. 3 months later, she was gone. Took Thomas with her. Took everything that mattered. Cole had found the note on the kitchen table. "I'm going to Portland with Arthur. He can give us the life you never could. Don't try to find us. Abigail, Arthur Selby, the banker in Fort Worth who'd loaned Cole money to buy cattle, then called the loan when Cole couldn't pay. The same man who'd been visiting Abigail while Cole was out mending fences, branding calves, trying to build something worth staying for. Cole had gone to Fort Worth, found Selby in his office counting money like it was prayer. Cole broke the man's arm in 2 places. Left hand, the one Selby had used to sign the loan papers. Right arm, the one he'd probably used to touch Abigail. It hadn't helped, hadn't brought Thomas back. Just earned a warrant for aggravated assault and a reputation as a man with a temper. He'd been running from that warrant ever since. Running from Texas, from the memory of his son's face, from the way Abigail had looked at him like he was something she needed to escape. The cigarette burned down to his fingers. He dropped it, ground it under his boot heel. Inside the house on the kitchen table sat a stack of letters. 5 of them. All from the same woman, Eleanor Ruth Crawford. He had placed the advertisement in the Helena newspaper on a whim. Or maybe desperation. The ranch was doing well enough, 2,400 acres of grazing land, good water, a small herd of cattle and horses. But the house was too quiet. The silence had teeth. Her first letter had arrived 3 weeks ago. Neat handwriting, careful words. She told him about her late husband, a miner named Samuel Dawson. About her daughter, about wanting a fresh start. She hadn't told him she was running from something until the second letter. Even then, she'd been vague. "My late mother-in-law made my life unbearable." Cole understood unbearable. He'd lived it for 10 years. By the 4th letter, he knew things she probably hadn't meant to reveal. The way she apologized in every paragraph. The way she asked permission for everything, even her own opinions. The way she wrote about her daughter with a fierce protectiveness that reminded Cole of a wolf guarding her young. Someone had broken this woman. Badly. The 5th letter sat unopened on the table. It had arrived that afternoon. Cole hadn't opened it yet because part of him was afraid she'd changed her mind. Decided a stranger's ranch was more dangerous than whatever she was running from. He stood, walked inside. The house smelled like dust and old leather. Abigail had taken the curtains when she left. Cole had never replaced them. He lit the oil lamp, picked up the letter. His hands were calloused, thick-fingered, more suited to rope and reins than paper. He opened it carefully. "Mr. Masterson, if your offer still stands, I accept. My daughter and I will arrive in Redstone Gulch on June 14th on the afternoon stagecoach. I hope I have not presumed too much in accepting without further discussion. If you have changed your mind, I will understand. But I must be honest, I have no other options. This is my last hope. Eleanor." My last hope. Cole read the line 3 times. He knew what desperation looked like. It looked like a woman with neat handwriting and careful apologies asking a stranger to save her life. He sat down, pulled out a clean sheet of paper, started to write. Miss Crawford arrived June 14th. I'll meet you at the stagecoach. Bring your daughter. There's room here for both of you. He paused, then added, you don't need hope. You need a place to stand still long enough to heal. I can give you that. The stutter caught in his head on the word heal. It always caught on H's, on T's when he thought about Thomas, on A's when he tried to say Abigail's name out loud. He sealed the letter. Tomorrow he'd ride into town, post it. And in 2 weeks, a woman he'd never met would step off a stagecoach with a child in tow, trusting him to be something other than another man who'd break her. Cole looked at his hands, scarred knuckles. The left one still showed the ridge of bone where he'd broken it on Arthur Selby's jaw. He hoped to God he was worth her trust. Redstone Gulch, June 14th, 1881. Morning, the town clerk's telegram had arrived 3 days ago. Masterson, woman named Ida Pewitt Dawson inquiring about your mail-order bride. Claimed to be family. Denied information. Thought you should know. Cole stood in the mercantile, the telegram folded in his vest pocket. Ida Pewitt Dawson. Eleanor had written that her mother-in-law's name was Ida Pewitt. Had written that the woman was dead. One of those things was a lie. Cole had spent 3 days deciding what to do with that information. He could send a telegram to Helena, tell Eleanor he knew. Call off the arrangement. Protect himself from whatever mess she was bringing to his doorstep. He didn't. Something about those letters. The apologizing, the carefulness, the way she'd written this is my last hope, like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. People didn't lie about dead relatives without a damn good reason. Cole had lived long enough to know that sometimes the truth people told wasn't as important as the truth they were trying to hide from. Morning, Cole. Hank Morrow stepped out from behind the bar, wiping his hands on an apron. The saloon doubled as the town's informal post office and gathering place. Hank was 60, built like a friendly bulldog, with a face that had seen every kind of trouble and decided most of it wasn't worth the energy to judge. Hank, heard you're expecting company today. Mail order bride. Hank's eyebrows climbed. Didn't think you were the type. Neither did I. She coming alone. Got a daughter, 7 years old. Hank whistled low. Instant family. That's brave or stupid. Maybe both. Cole almost smiled. Probably both. Well, Hank pulled out 2 glasses, poured whiskey without asking. Here's to brave stupidity. May it work out better than it usually does. They drank. The whiskey burned familiar and grounding. Cole. Hank set his glass down, his expression shifting to something more serious. Word of advice. That woman who came through 3 days ago asking about your bride. Ida Dawson. She's staying at the hotel. Paid for a week in advance. Been talking to folks. Reverend Whitley mostly. And you know how Whitley likes to talk. Cole's jaw tightened. What's she saying? That Eleanor Crawford is her daughter-in-law. That the girl's not right in the head, prone to fits delusions. Says she's been caring for her out of Christian duty since her son died, but the girl ran away. Says she's dangerous. The glass in Cole's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Dangerous how? Sets fires supposedly. Hurts animals. Whitley's already told half the church council. You bring that woman here, you're going to have half the town watching, waiting for her to prove Ida right. Cole set the glass down carefully. And if Ida's lying, then you've got a different problem. Woman who'd spread lies like that isn't doing it for fun. She's doing it for control. Cole thought about the letters again. My late mother-in-law made my life unbearable. Unbearable didn't cover lies about mental illness. Didn't cover 3 years of isolation. Didn't cover showing up in a town 200 miles away to reclaim someone who'd run. This wasn't about a concerned relative. This was about ownership. Thanks for the warning, Cole said. You still going to meet the stagecoach? Yes. Hank studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Then you'll need witnesses. Folks who can testify later that Eleanor came here of her own free will. That Ida didn't give her a choice to stay. You offering to be one, I'm offering to stand at that stagecoach stop and watch what happens. What I see might be useful. Hank refilled both glasses. also offering to knock Ida on her ass if she tries anything violent, free of charge. This time Cole did smile. Appreciated. They drank again. Outside, the sun climbed toward noon. In 3 hours, the stagecoach would arrive. In 3 hours, Cole would meet a woman who'd lied to him about something important. A woman who was running from something she deemed worse than marrying a scarred stranger with a criminal warrant. And standing in that crowd would be the thing she was running from. Cole finished his drink, set the glass down, and walked out into the heat. Bishop was tied at the rail. The horse lifted his head, nickered softly. "Big day, boy," Cole said quietly. His stutter never showed when he talked to the horse. "Woman coming, and her little girl, and probably trouble." Bishop's ear flicked. "Yeah, I know. I'm not good with trouble, but seems to me running from trouble is how I ended up here. Alone. So maybe this time I stand still. See what happens." The horse didn't answer. Cole swung into the saddle, turned toward the edge of town where the stagecoach would arrive. 3 hours. He had 3 hours to prepare for the moment when he'd meet Eleanor Ruth Crawford's eyes and decide whether the lie she told was forgivable. He had a feeling the answer was yes. The stagecoach stopped, 2 o'clock p.m. The stagecoach rolled in 15 minutes late, covered in dust. The horses lathered from the climb through the mountain pass. Cole stood in the shade of the livery stable, hat pulled low, watching. A small crowd had gathered. That wasn't unusual. Stagecoach arrivals were entertainment in a town the size of Redstone Gulch, but the composition of the crowd made Cole's jaw tighten. Reverend Whitley stood near the front, his wife beside him, both wearing expressions of righteous concern. 3 women from the church auxiliary clustered nearby, whispering behind gloved hands. And standing slightly apart, wearing a pressed navy dress and a small hat with a single black feather, was Ida Poot Dawson. She was tall, thin, to the point of gauntness, with iron gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her face was lined but handsome, the kind of face that photographs well and lies effortlessly. She held herself with the posture of a woman who'd spent her life in church pews, spine straight. Hands folded, expression serene. Cole had seen that serenity before. On men who'd tortured prisoners during the war and then sat down to write letters home about God's mercy. The stagecoach door opened. The driver climbed down, opened the passenger door, extended a hand. A woman stepped out. Eleanor Ruth Crawford was smaller than Cole had imagined. Maybe 5'3", slim-built, wearing a gray traveling dress that had seen better days. Dark hair pinned back, a few strands escaping to curl against her neck. She turned to help someone behind her, a child. The girl Margaret emerged clutching a cloth doll, 7 years old, dark hair like her mother's eyes, too serious for her age. Eleanor scanned the crowd. Looking for him, Cole realized. She'd never seen his face, only had his description from the letters. Tall brown hat scar on the left side of my face. You won't miss me. Their eyes met. He saw her take in the scar, the height, the hat, saw recognition and then something else. Relief, like she'd been half expecting him not to show. Cole stepped forward, removed his hat. "Miss Crawford?" Her voice was softer than he'd expected. "Whit Masterson, thank you for meeting us." Up close, he could see the bruise on her collarbone, barely covered by the high neck of her dress. Could see the way her hands trembled, gripping her daughter's shoulder. Could see the dark circles under her eyes, the hollowness in her cheeks. This woman was starving. Not for food, though, probably that too. For safety. "My pleasure, ma'am. This must be Margaret." The child peered up at him, half hiding behind her mother's skirt. "Say hello to Mr. Masterson, sweetheart," Eleanor prompted gently. "Hello," Margaret whispered. Cole knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. "Hello, Margaret. That's a fine doll you've got there. What's her name?" "Annabelle." "That's a pretty name. You take good care of her, I can tell." A tiny smile ghosted across the child's face. Cole started to stand to reach for Eleanor's trunk when a voice cut through the afternoon air like a knife through silk. "Eleanor, darling, I've been so worried." The change in Eleanor was instantaneous. Her whole body went rigid. The color drained from her face. Margaret made a small sound and pressed closer to her mother's legs. Ida Pewitt Dawson stepped forward, arms outstretched as if for an embrace, her face arranged in an expression of loving concern. "You left Helena without a word. I was beside myself. Thank heavens I thought to check the stagecoach routes." Eleanor couldn't speak. Cole watched her mouth open-close. No sound came out. The silence stretched, and into it the crowd's murmurs grew. Cole stepped between them. Not aggressively, just positioned himself so Ida would have to go through him to reach Eleanor. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "I don't believe we've met." Ida's eyes flicked to him, assessed him in half a second. "I'm Ida Dawson, Eleanor's mother-in-law." Her smile was warm practiced. "The one she told you was dead, I presume?" The crowd gasped. Cole heard Reverend Whitley murmur something to his wife. Heard the churchwomen's whispers kick up like wind through dry grass. Eleanor made a sound, almost a whimper. Ida's voice rose, projecting now, playing to the audience. "My poor daughter-in-law is troubled, you see. She has episodes. I've cared for her since my son Samuel passed, God rest him. But she's prone to running away, making up stories. I've come to bring her home, to bring them both home." Margaret started to cry. Silent tears that kind children cry when they've learned that making noise brings punishment. Cole looked at Eleanor. Her face was white. Her hands shook so hard he could see the tremor from 3 feet away. She looked like a woman waiting for a blow to fall. He looked at Ida, at the performance, the concern that didn't reach her eyes, the way she'd positioned herself so the crowd could see her face but not Eleanor's. And he thought about the letters. "This is my last hope. Miss Crawford is here at my invitation," Cole said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "As my intended bride. That makes this a private matter." Ida's smile faltered for half a second. Then it was back sharper. "Your intended bride, Mr. Masterson. Did she tell you she's mentally unstable? Did she tell you about the fires she set in Helena? About the animals she hurt?" "That's not true." The voice was so quiet Cole almost missed it. But it came from Eleanor, her first words since Ida appeared. "I never set any fires. That's a lie." Ida turned to her, and for just a moment the mask slipped. Cole saw what was underneath. Not concern, not love. Something cold and calculating and viciously pleased. "Eleanor, darling, you're confused again. Remember the barn fire, the chickens? I remember you locking me in the cellar and telling everyone I was sick with fever." Eleanor's voice was stronger now. Still shaking, but stronger. "I remember you holding my head in the pig trough every Tuesday for 3 years. I remember everything, Ida." The crowd's murmur grew louder. Ida's spine stiffened. "Sheriff Boone," Ida called out. A stocky man in a vest and badge stepped forward reluctantly. "This woman has kidnapped my granddaughter and fled across state lines. I demand you detain her until I can arrange transport back to Helena." Margaret's crying grew louder. Eleanor pulled her daughter close, wrapped both arms around her. Cole moved again. This time he put himself fully between Ida and Eleanor, blocking Ida's view of them both. "Sheriff," he said, not taking his eyes off Ida. "Miss Crawford came here of her own free will. Her daughter came with her. Nobody's been kidnapped. And unless you've got a warrant from a judge saying otherwise, I'm taking my intended bride to my ranch. Right now." Sheriff Boone looked uncomfortable. "Cole, I don't have a warrant, but Mrs. Dawson's raised some serious accusations." "Accusations aren't evidence." "True enough." Boone shifted his weight. "But might be wise to sort this out before anyone goes anywhere. We can sort it out tomorrow, after Eleanor's had a chance to rest." Cole kept his voice level. "Unless you're telling me a woman can't accept a marriage proposal in Montana territory without her mother-in-law's permission." That got a few chuckles from the crowd. Boone's mustache twitched. "I'm not saying that." "Then we're done here." Cole turned to Eleanor. Her eyes were wide, disbelieving, like she couldn't quite process that someone had just stood between her and Ida and not backed down. "Get your trunk, Miss Crawford," Cole said gently. "Let's get you home." For a moment she didn't move. Then Margaret tugged at her hand. "Mama," the child whispered, "can we go with Mr. Cole, please?" That broke the spell. Eleanor nodded, bent to pick up her carpet bag. Cole grabbed her trunk, hoisted it onto his shoulder like it weighed nothing. Ida's voice followed them, sweet as poisoned honey. "Very well, Mr. Masterson. But mark my words, you're sheltering a dangerous woman. When she shows her true nature, don't say I didn't warn you." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was directed at Eleanor alone. "And Eleanor, darling, I'll be staying at the Redstone Hotel, room 4. When you come crawling back, and you will, I'll be waiting." Eleanor's step faltered. Cole steadied her with a hand on her elbow, gentle but firm. "Keep walking," he murmured. "Don't look back." She did, kept her eyes forward, kept Margaret close, kept moving toward the wagon Cole had waiting at the edge of the crowd. Behind them, Ida watched. Cole didn't turn around, but he could feel her eyes, could feel the weight of whatever calculation she was making. He just made an enemy. He knew that. Knew that Ida Put Dawson wasn't going to let this go. Wasn't going to let Eleanor slip away without a fight. But as he helped Eleanor into the wagon, as he lifted little Margaret up beside her mother, as he saw the way Eleanor's hands shook with something that might have been fear or might have been hope, he knew he'd do it again. He'd spent 10 years running from fights. Maybe it was time to stand still and face one. The wagon wheels cut through Montana dust, raising a cloud that hung in the still air like a ghost. Eleanor sat rigid on the bench seat, one arm around Margaret, the other gripping the edge of the wagon so hard her knuckles had gone white. She hadn't spoken since they'd left town, hadn't looked at Cole, just stared straight ahead at the road unwinding before them, her jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. Cole let the silence stretch. He'd learned in the war that sometimes the best thing you could do for someone in shock was give them space to breathe. Eleanor Crawford had just been ambushed in front of a town full of strangers by a woman who'd spent 3 years breaking her. She'd earned whatever silence she needed. Margaret had fallen asleep against her mother's side, the cloth doll clutched to her chest. The child's face was peaceful in sleep, but even unconscious, she pressed close to Eleanor, seeking safety even in dreams. "She's staying at the hotel." Eleanor's voice came out rough, like she hadn't used it in days. "Ida, she's staying in town." "I know. She's not going to leave. She's going to stay until she gets what she wants." "And what does she want?" Eleanor finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were brown, he noticed. Dark brown, almost black in the afternoon light. And old. Too old for 26. "Me. She wants me back. And Margaret." Eleanor's hand tightened on her daughter's shoulder. "The house in Helena is mine. Samuel left it to me. But as long as Ida had guardianship, she controlled everything. The property, the income, my labor. I was worth more to her than cattle. Guardianship ends when you remarry." A bitter smile ghosted across Eleanor's face. "You've thought about that." "I've thought about a lot of things since I got a telegram 3 days ago saying Ida Put Dawson was asking questions about my mail-order bride in town." Eleanor's breath caught. She looked away. "You knew. You knew I lied about her being dead and you still came to the stagecoach." "I did." "Why?" Cole guided Bishop around a rut in the road, took his time answering. "Because I've been lied to before. By someone who had better options than lying and chose it anyway. You didn't have better options. That makes a difference, Martumo. I should have told you the truth." "Probably, but if you had, I might not have written back, and then you'd still be in Helena." He glanced at her. "Are you safer here or there?" Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Here." "Then you made the right choice." The road crested a small rise and the land opened up before them. Grassland rolled toward distant mountains, golden in the late afternoon sun. A creek cut through the valley lined with cottonwood trees. And in the middle of it all, a ranch house, small, sturdy, built from logs and riverstone. A barn stood nearby, a corral with horses fencing that stretched toward the horizon. "That's Circle M," Cole said. "Been in my family since my father settled here in '62. 2,400 acres. Most of it's grazing land. We run about 200 head of cattle, 30 horses. It's not fancy, but it's mine." Eleanor stared at the ranch, at the space, at the sheer amount of open land with no neighbors, no eyes watching, no hands ready to shove her face into filth. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Margaret stirred, rubbed her eyes, sat up. She saw the ranch, and her whole face transformed. "Mama, look, is that where we're going to live?" "If Mr. Masterson will have us, yes." Margaret turned to Cole, eyes shining. "Really, we can stay." "Really." Cole pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. "In fact, the house is yours now. I've been sleeping in the bunkhouse most nights anyway. Doesn't feel right for a man alone to take up a whole house when it was meant for a family." Eleanor looked at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. "You'd give us the house. It was my mother's before she passed. She'd have wanted it used proper." He climbed down, came around to help Eleanor. She flinched when he reached up, then forced herself still. Let him take her hand, help her down. His grip was careful, gentle. She'd forgotten men's hands could be anything but weapons. Margaret scrambled down on her own, ran toward the corral, where Bishop's companion horses watched with mild curiosity. "Careful, sweetheart," Eleanor called. "I'll watch her." Cole walked over to where Margaret stood at the fence, transfixed. "You like horses, Margaret?" The child nodded, shy again, now that they were here, now that the dream was becoming real. "Well, that's good, because we've got plenty of them. See that big roan there? That's Bishop. He's my horse. And that paint mare next to him, that's Juniper. She's gentle as a lamb. Maybe tomorrow I can teach you to brush her. Would you like that?" "Can I?" Margaret looked back at her mother, seeking permission, even for hope. "We'll see." Eleanor's voice was soft, careful, the voice of a woman who'd learned not to promise things that could be taken away. Cole lifted Margaret up so she could reach over the fence. Juniper ambled over, snuffled at the child's outstretched hand. "There you go. See, she likes you already," Margaret giggled. The sound was so unexpected, so pure that Eleanor felt something crack in her chest. When was the last time she'd heard her daughter laugh? Cole set Margaret down gently. "Why don't you go explore the yard, but stay where your mama can see you, all right?" "Yes, sir." Margaret ran off, still clutching her doll, her earlier fear already fading into the wonder of open space and no locked doors. Cole turned to Eleanor. She was watching her daughter with an expression that made his throat tight. Love and grief and relief all tangled together. "She's safe here," he said quietly. "Both of you are." Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice. "Come on, I'll show you the house." The inside of the ranch house was sparse but clean. One main room served as kitchen and living area, a stone fireplace on the far wall. Two bedrooms off to the side. The furniture was simple, handmade, built to last. No curtains on the windows, no rugs on the floor, no softness anywhere. A man's house. A lonely man's house. "I know it's not much," Cole said, standing in the doorway like he wasn't sure he was allowed inside anymore. "But you can change whatever you want. Add things. My mother had curtains, rugs, all that. Abigail took them when she left. I never got around to replacing them." "Abigail," Eleanor set her carpet bag down carefully. "Your wife." "Ex-wife, I suppose. Though we never divorced, she just left." "The letter you wrote mentioned a son." Cole's jaw tightened. "Thomas. He was 6 when she took him. He'd be 12 now." "Do you know where they are?" "Portland, last I heard, but that was 10 years ago. Could be anywhere now." He paused. "I stopped looking after a while. Told myself it was because I didn't know where to start. Truth is, I was afraid I'd find them and they'd be better off without me." Eleanor heard the pain under the words. The self-blame. She knew that flavor of guilt. Had tasted it every day for 3 years, wondering if she'd done something to deserve Ida's cruelty. Wondering if she could have saved herself earlier. Wondering if she was broken beyond repair. "Fear is a liar," she said quietly. "It tells us we're not worth fighting for, that we deserve what we get, that running is the same as surviving." Cole looked at her. "You believe that?" "I'm trying to." She walked to the window, looked out at Margaret chasing butterflies in the yard. "I spent 3 years believing Ida when she said I was worthless. Slow-minded, dangerous. Part of me still believes it, but another part of me got on that stagecoach anyway. So maybe I'm learning." "You're not worthless." The words came out harder than Cole intended. "And you're sure as hell not slow-minded. Those letters you wrote, the way you put words together, that's not stupidity. That's someone who spent a lot of time thinking." Eleanor's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the windowsill. "Ida used to say I was too smart for my own good. Said that's why I needed to be taught lessons. The pig trough was a lesson. The cellar was a lesson. Everything was a lesson in why I should know my place." Cole's fist clenched at his side. "How long were you in the cellar?" 2 weeks last winter. She told the town I had scarlet fever. Kept me locked down there with nothing but a bucket and a candle. She'd slide bread under the door every other day. Just enough to keep me alive." Eleanor's voice had gone flat, mechanical, the voice of someone reciting facts to avoid feeling them. "When she finally let me out, my legs wouldn't work for 3 days. I had to crawl to take care of Margaret." Jesus Christ. "He didn't help much." Eleanor turned from the window. "But I had time to think down there. Time to plan. I found my father's old law books in a trunk Ida had stored in the corner. She didn't know I could read well enough to understand them. I read every one, cover to cover, by candlelight, law books of Montana Territorial Code, property law, contract law, guardianship statutes. A ghost of a smile. Ida thought she was punishing me. Instead, she gave me the tools to escape. I learned that guardianship ends at age 21 or upon marriage. I learned about property rights, about what she could and couldn't legally do. I memorized every section that might matter. Cole stared at her. You studied law in a cellar. I had nothing else to do, and knowledge felt like power when I had none. Something shifted in Cole's chest. This woman wasn't just running. She was armed. Not with weapons, but with something more dangerous, information. The kind that could dismantle a cage bar by bar. Ida doesn't know, does she, that you can recite territorial code? She thinks I spent 2 weeks going mad in the dark. Eleanor's smile had teeth now. Let her keep thinking that. That night, they ate dinner at the small kitchen table. Eleanor had insisted on cooking despite Cole's protests. She'd found flour, salt, some dried beef in the pantry, made biscuits and gravy while Margaret set the table with mismatched plates. It was the first real meal Cole had eaten at that table in 10 years. The first time the house felt like something other than a place to sleep between work. This is good, he said and meant it. It's simple. Simple is good. He watched her push food around her plate. She'd served herself half of what she'd given him, and even that seemed too much. You need to eat more than that. I'm not very hungry. When's the last time you had a full meal? Eleanor's fork stilled. I don't remember. Margaret looked up from her plate. Grandma Ida said Mama was getting fat, said she needed to eat less. Eleanor's face went carefully blank. That's enough, Margaret. But it's true. She made you give me your food. She said you didn't need as much because you didn't work as hard as her. Cole set his fork down slowly, kept his voice level. Eleanor, how much did Ida let you eat? Enough. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She stood abruptly, started clearing plates. I should get Margaret ready for bed. Cole caught her wrist, gentle. She could pull away if she wanted. She didn't. You're safe here, he said quietly. That means you eat, real portions, every meal. No one's going to punish you for being hungry. Eleanor looked at his hand on her wrist, at the careful grip, at the way he held her like she was something that might break if he squeezed too hard. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to live without waiting for the next blow, without counting every bite, every word, every breath to make sure I'm not giving her a reason. You'll learn. We'll figure it out together. He released her wrist. But tonight you eat, for Margaret's sake if not your own. She needs to see her mother fed. Eleanor looked at her daughter, at the way Margaret watched with those two serious eyes already learning the wrong lessons about what women deserved. She sat back down, picked up her fork, ate. After Margaret fell asleep in the smaller bedroom, clutching Annabelle, and burrowed under quilts that smelled like lavender, Eleanor found Cole on the porch. He was rolling a cigarette, staring out at the darkness where the land met sky. Can I join you? She asked. It's your porch now. She sat in the chair beside him, careful to leave space between them. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of grass and distant pine. Tell me about Redstone Gulch, she said. The people, who I need to worry about. Besides Ida. Cole lit the cigarette, drew deep. Reverend R. Whitley. He was standing with Ida at the stagecoach. That means she's already got into here. Whitley runs the church, and the church runs most of the social life in town. If he's convinced you're dangerous, half the town will follow. What does Ida have on him? Cole glanced at her. You think she has something? She always does. Ida doesn't operate on persuasion. She operates on leverage. Hank mentioned Whitley's been buying expensive suits in Helena. New watch chain. That's not a country preacher's salary. So he's skimming the church funds. Eleanor's mind was already working. That's embezzlement, a territorial crime if it can be proven. You think Ida knows? I think Ida makes it her business to know things. She probably found out and offered to keep quiet in exchange for his support. Eleanor wrapped her arms around herself against the chill. That's how she works. Find the weakness, exploit it, own people with their own sins. What did she have on you? The question hung in the air between them. Eleanor was quiet for so long, Cole thought she wouldn't answer. Margaret, she said finally. Ida threatened to have her taken away if I didn't comply. Said she'd tell the authorities I was an unfit mother, that I hurt her. The law would have believed Ida. She had guardianship papers, a respectable reputation. I was just the slow-minded daughter-in-law who everyone pitied. But you got out anyway, because staying meant watching my daughter learn that women exist to be broken. I couldn't let her grow up thinking that was normal. Eleanor's voice cracked. I would have endured anything for myself, but not for her, not for my daughter. Cole stubbed out the cigarette. That's not weakness. That's the opposite. Doesn't feel like strength. Feels like I waited too long. 3 years too long. You're here now. That's what matters. They sat in silence, listening to the night sounds. An owl somewhere in the distance. The soft nicker of horses in the corral. The wind moving through grass like water. Cole, Eleanor said quietly, what happens when Ida doesn't give up? When she escalates? Then we deal with it. You don't know her. She doesn't stop. She'll turn this whole town against you. She'll destroy your reputation, your business, everything you've built. And she'll do it with a smile on her face and a Bible in her hand. Let her try. I'm serious. You could lose everything. Cole turned to look at her. I've already lost everything that mattered. My wife, my son, 10 years of my life spent running from a warrant because I was too angry and too broken to think straight. What's Ida going to take from me that I haven't already lost? Eleanor had no answer for that. Sides, Cole said softer now. I'm not alone this time. You know her patterns. You studied law in a cellar. You're not the helpless victim she thinks you are. Maybe together we've got a chance, or maybe we both go down. Maybe. He almost smiled. But at least we'll go down fighting. Cole woke before dawn habit from years of ranch work. He dressed quietly in the bunkhouse, pulled on his boots, grabbed his hat. The house was still dark. Eleanor and Margaret would be asleep for another hour at least. He needed to ride into town, get supplies, and more importantly, gauge the damage Ida had done in the 12 hours since the stagecoach arrival. He saddled Bishop, swung up, and headed toward Redstone Gulch as the sky turned from black to gray to pale gold. The town was just stirring when he arrived. Hank's saloon was already open, smoke rising from the chimney. Cole tied Bishop at the rail and went inside. Hank looked up from behind the bar, his expression grim. Wondered when you'd show up. That bad? Worse. Hank poured coffee without asking, pushed the cup across the bar. Ida spent yesterday evening making the rounds. Hit every merchant, every rancher's wife, every influential family. By the time she was done, half the town believes Eleanor Crawford is a madwoman who burns down barns and tortures small animals. Cole's grip tightened on the cup. And the other half doesn't care enough to argue. Cole, I've got to tell you straight. Morrison Feed and Grain won't sell to you anymore. Says Ida convinced him you're harboring a dangerous woman, and if he does business with you, she'll organize a boycott. He can't afford to lose that many customers. Morrison's the only feed supplier within 50 miles. I know. My cattle need supplemental feed, especially in winter. I know that too. Hank leaned forward. But here's the thing. Morrison's scared. And when people are scared, they protect themselves first. Ida's not just spreading rumors. She's building a coalition. Cole set the cup down carefully. What else? Garrett's Mercantile won't extend you credit. The blacksmith suddenly remembered he's too busy to take on new work. And Reverend Whitley preached a sermon last night about the dangers of welcoming strangers without knowing their true nature. Never mentioned Eleanor by name, but everyone knew who he meant. This was threat level 1, financial isolation. Cut off his access to supplies. Make it impossible to run the ranch, force him to choose between Eleanor and his livelihood. Classic siege tactics. Hank, Cole said slowly, you know the Montana Territorial Commerce Act. Can't say I do. Neither did I until about 2 hours ago. Eleanor explained it to me. Section 12 allows ranchers to form cooperative buying groups. Pool their resources, purchase directly from suppliers, and Helena bypass local merchants entirely. Hank's eyebrows climbed. You're going to start a co-op. If I can get enough ranchers on board, needs at least 4 to qualify. Cole pulled out a piece of paper, unfolded it. Eleanor's handwriting neat and precise. A list of names. These are the ranchers Eleanor thinks might be sympathetic. Men who've had problems with Morrison's prices or who don't attend Whitley's church. She wrote this morning before I left. Found it on the kitchen table. Cole smiled slightly. Told you she wasn't slow-minded. Hank studied the list. Dutch Henderson, Tom Black, Sarah Covington. Good choices. They're all independent types. Don't care much for being told what to do. He looked up. But Cole, even if you get the co-op running, that's a long game. You need feed now. Winter's 4 months out. I've got enough stockpiled for 2 months. After that, we'll see. And if Ida escalates before then we escalate back. Eleanor spent the morning exploring the ranch with Margaret. Showed her daughter the vegetable garden, overgrown but salvageable. The chicken coop empty but sturdy. The root cellar cool and dark, and nothing like the cellar in Helena, because this one had a door that opened from the inside. Margaret ran ahead fearless in the daylight, chasing butterflies and examining every new thing with the wonder of a child who'd been locked inside for too long. Eleanor stood in the garden, hands on her hips, calculating. Potatoes could still be planted this late, beans, squash, she'd need seeds tools. But the soil was good. With work, this could feed them through winter. With work. The thought made her smile. She wasn't afraid of work. Work had kept her sane. Work had given her purpose when Ida tried to strip it away. She was bending to pull a weed when she heard hoofbeats. Fast, coming up the road from town. Eleanor straightened, hard hammering. Called to Margaret. Sweetheart, come here now. The child obeyed instantly, ran to her mother's side. Eleanor pulled her close, scanned the horizon. A rider, not Cole. Too small. A woman. The horse slowed as it approached. The rider was young, maybe 20, wearing a split riding skirt and a wide-brimmed hat. She dismounted in front of the house, tied her horse. Mrs. Masterson, she called. I'm not married yet. Miss Crawford. The woman came closer. She had a kind face freckled from sun, with intelligent green eyes. I'm Sarah Covington. I run the Double C Ranch about 10 miles north. Heard you arrived yesterday? Eleanor kept Margaret behind her. Word travels fast. In a town this size, lightning fast. Sarah's smile faded. Look, I'll be direct. I heard what Ida Dawson's been saying about you. Heard what Reverend Whitley's have been preaching. And I wanted you to know that not everyone in Redstone Gulch is a sheep following whatever narrative gets spoon-fed to them. Eleanor studied her. Why are you here? Because I know what it's like to be the woman everyone talks about. I run a ranch alone. My husband died 3 years ago. There are men in this town who think a woman has no business owning land, who've tried to buy me out, pressure me, make life difficult until I sell. Sarah's chin lifted. Ida Dawson came to me yesterday, offered to help protect the community from you, wanted me to sign a petition to have you removed from town as a danger to public safety. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Did you sign, I told her to go to hell? Sarah grinned, politely of course, with biblical citations. Drove her up a wall. Despite everything, Eleanor felt herself smile. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. That petition's going to other ranchers. Some will sign, probably enough to make trouble. Sarah's expression sobered. But I wanted you to know you've got at least one ally. And if you need anything, feed supplies, help you send word to the Double C. Why would you help me? You don't know me. No, but I know Ida's type, and I know what it looks like when a woman's running from something worse than the unknown. Sarah's eyes were sharp, knowing. I also know Cole Masterson. He's a good man, quiet, keeps to himself, but solid. If he's vouching for you, that's enough for me. Eleanor felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. I don't know what to say. Say you'll fight. Say you won't let that viper run you out of town. Sarah mounted her horse. And say you'll come to dinner at my ranch next week. Bring Margaret. Bring Cole. I make a mean pot roast and you look like you could use a friend. I could. Then it's settled. Sarah tipped her hat. Oh, and Miss Crawford. Whatever Ida told people about you setting fires and hurting animals, I grew up with horses. I can read people by how they treat animals. The way your daughter talks to those chickens over there, gentle and careful, she learned that from you. Ida's a liar. She rode off before Eleanor could respond. Margaret tugged at her mother's skirt. Mama, I like her. So do I, sweetheart. Eleanor watched Sarah disappear down the road. So do I. Cole returned at midday with news, good and bad. Good, he'd secured commitments from 3 ranchers for the co-op, one more and they could file the paperwork. Bad, Ida had filed a formal complaint with the territorial marshal's office, claiming Eleanor had abandoned her legal guardian and kidnapped a minor across state lines. It's a lie, Eleanor said. She was kneading bread dough at the kitchen table, her hands working the rhythm she'd learned from her mother. Margaret's my daughter. I have sole custody as her surviving parent. Do you have papers proving that? Eleanor's hands stilled. Samuel never made a will. When he died, custody automatically went to me. It's territorial law. But do you have a document? Something written? No, it was understood. Cole sat down heavily. Ida's got guardianship papers, signed by a judge, even if they only give her authority over you. Not Margaret in court, it's going to look like she has legal standing. Then we need to prove she doesn't. How, Eleanor thought. Her mind raced through the law books she'd memorized. The guardianship papers, do you know what they say exactly? No, but Hank mentioned Ida showed them to Sheriff Boone yesterday, claimed they gave her custody of both you and your daughter. She's lying. Montana guardianship law is clear. A guardian can only be appointed for a minor child if both parents are deceased or deemed unfit. Samuel's dead, but I'm alive and was never declared unfit. The papers can't legally extend to Margaret. But if a judge signed them, then the judge made an error, or Ida lied on the application. Eleanor's jaw set. I need to see those papers. I need to know exactly what they say. They're probably with Ida at the hotel. Then we need to get them. Cole looked at her. You want to break into Ida's hotel room. I want to verify the legal documents being used against me. There's a difference. That difference won't matter if you get caught. I won't get caught. Eleanor shaped the dough into a loaf, set it aside to rise. I've been sneaking around Ida for 3 years. I know how she thinks. I know her patterns. Eleanor. She goes to bed at 9 o'clock every night, reads her Bible for exactly 30 minutes, then sleeps like the dead until 6 in the morning. I've timed it. That was in Helena. This is different. People don't change their habits in new places. They cling to them harder. Eleanor wiped flour from her hands. Cole, if those guardianship papers are fraudulent, we can invalidate them. Without them, Ida has no legal claim to me or Margaret. The whole case collapses. Cole wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was too dangerous, too risky, but he looked at her face and saw the same expression he'd seen at the stagecoach. Determination. The look of a woman who'd survived worse than this and come out the other side with her mind intact and her will unbroken. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it right. We don't just look at the papers. We copy them, word for word, so we have evidence. Agreed. And if something goes wrong, you run. You don't try to talk your way out. You don't confront Ida. You run and let me handle it. Eleanor's smile was thin. I've gotten very good at running, Cole. It's the standing still I'm trying to learn. That evening, Cole rode into town alone. Tide Bishop at Hank's saloon went inside. The place was half full, miners and ranch hands drinking away the day's dust. Hank poured whiskey without being asked. Need a favor? Cole said quietly. Name it. I need you to keep Ida Dawson occupied tomorrow night, 9 to 10 o'clock. Hank's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. What are you planning? Better you don't know. Cole, she's staying in room 4 at the hotel. I need her out of that room for 1 hour. And if she won't leave, make her. Tell her there's an emergency, a fire, a fight. Hell, tell her the Reverend wants to see her, whatever it takes. Hank was quiet for a moment. This is about the guardianship papers. How did you know? Because you're not stupid enough to risk everything unless the payoff's worth it. And those papers are the only legal leverage Ida's got. Hank refilled both glasses. I'll do it. But Cole, if this goes sideways, if you get caught, Ida will have you arrested for breaking and entering. That warrant from Texas will be the least of your problems. I know. And you're doing it anyway. I'm doing it anyway. Hank raised his glass. Then here's to brave stupidity. Again. They drank. Outside, the sun set red over the mountains. Storm weather coming. Cole could feel it in the air, that electric tension before lightning struck. Eleanor put Margaret to bed early, sang her a lullaby her own mother had sung. The child fought sleep, afraid to close her eyes in this new place. "Mama," Margaret whispered, "is Grandma Ida going to find us?" "She already has, sweetheart. Is she going to take us back?" Eleanor smoothed her daughter's hair. "No, she's not." "How do you know?" "Because I won't let her. Neither will Mr. Cole." Eleanor kissed Margaret's forehead. "I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But being scared doesn't mean we're not safe. It just means we're still learning what safe feels like." "I like it here," Margaret said, her eyes already drooping. "I like the horses and the space, and Mr. Cole's nice." "He is." "Do you think we can stay forever?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "I hope so, baby. I really hope so." Margaret fell asleep holding her mother's hand. Eleanor stayed until the child's breathing deepened, then carefully extracted her fingers and stood. Cole was waiting on the porch. "She asleep?" he asked. "Finally." Eleanor sat in the chair beside him. "She's afraid Ida will take us back." "Won't happen. You can't promise that." "Watch me." Cole pulled out a piece of paper, handed it to her. "Marriage license. I picked it up in town today. All it needs is our signatures and a witness." Eleanor stared at the document. "You want to get married? Now. Tomorrow, as soon as possible." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Eleanor Ida's case rests on guardianship. But guardianship ends the moment you remarry. If we're legally married, she has no claim. None. That's why you asked me to come here, not because you wanted a wife, because you wanted to help me escape." "I wanted both." Cole's voice was rough. "I won't lie and say I'm not lonely, that I don't wake up in that bunkhouse wishing there was someone to talk to besides a horse. But I also won't trap you in a marriage you don't want. We can make this legal end, Ida's guardianship, and then if you want to leave after, I won't stop you. Leave and go where I have nothing. No money, no property that Ida hasn't claimed. You have the house in Helena. It was Samuel's. That makes it yours as his widow." Eleanor blinked. "I never thought about it like that." "Well, start thinking about it. Because if you own that property, you're not destitute. You have assets." He paused. "And if Ida's been living there collecting rent or income from it, that's theft. You could press charges. She'd never let that go to court. Maybe not, but the threat of it might be useful." Eleanor looked at the marriage license again, at the blank spaces waiting for names. "If we do this, it's real. Legal marriage. That's not something to take lightly." "I know. You'd be tied to a woman with a target on her back, a woman who comes with a 7-year-old child and more baggage than most pack mules. I'd be tied to a woman who studied law in a cellar and found a way out when everyone said there wasn't one. That's not baggage. That's strength." Cole met her eyes. "Eleanor, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not even asking you to stay forever. I'm asking you to let me stand between you and the thing that's trying to destroy you, even if it's just for a little while." She was quiet for a long time. The night sounds filled the space between them. Finally, she spoke. "I'm afraid," she said softly. "I'm afraid that if I say yes, it's not a marriage. It's just another marriage with better bars. Then we make it something else, a partnership, an alliance." Cole's voice was steady. "You want your voice heard, I'll listen. You want control over your own life. Take it. The house is yours. The decisions are yours. I'm not Ida. I don't need to own you to stand beside you." Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. "I don't know how to trust this. How to trust you." "Then don't trust me yet. Trust yourself. Trust that you're smart enough to know if I'm lying. Trust that if I do something you don't like, you'll tell me. And trust that you can leave if you need to. The door's never locked." The door's never locked. Those words hit harder than anything else. Eleanor realized she was crying now. Not sobbing, just quiet tears tracking down her face. "Yes," she whispered, "I'll marry you tomorrow. And then we'll get those papers from Ida's room, and then we'll build a case she can't beat." Cole reached over, took her hand. This time she didn't flinch. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For trusting me enough to try them." They sat like that, hands linked until the stars came out and the night turned cold. And for the first time in 3 years, Eleanor felt something that might have been hope, or maybe just the absence of despair. Either way, it was enough. The wedding took place the next morning in Hank's saloon. No church, no ceremony, just Judge Morrison from the county seat who happened to be passing through. He looked over the license, raised an eyebrow at the speed of things, but didn't comment. "Do you, Cole Masterson, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "And do you, Eleanor Ruth Crawford, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband?" Eleanor looked at Cole, at his scarred face, his steady eyes, the way he stood there like he'd fight the whole world if it meant keeping his word. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me by Montana Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife." Morrison closed his book. "You may kiss the bride if you're of a mind to." Cole looked at Eleanor, waited. She nodded just slightly. He kissed her. Gentle, brief, a promise more than a passion. When he pulled back, Eleanor was smiling, small but real. Hank produced a bottle of champagne from somewhere, popped the cork. "To the happy couple, may your lives be boring and your troubles small." They drank. Eleanor signed her new name for the first time. Eleanor Ruth Masterson. It looked strange on paper, like someone else's name, someone who wasn't broken, someone who had a future. Maybe she could learn to be that person. That night, after Margaret was asleep, after the moon rose high and the town settled into silence, Eleanor and Cole rode toward Redstone Gulch. They left the horses a block from the hotel, moved quietly through shadows. Hank was waiting at the hotel entrance. "She's in the saloon. Told her there was a fight and I needed her testimony about what she'd seen earlier." "She's furious, but she's occupied." "How long do we have?" Cole asked. 30 minutes, maybe 40 if I can stretch it. After that, she'll get suspicious." Eleanor nodded. "That's enough." They went upstairs. Room 4. The door was locked, but Eleanor had expected that. She pulled a hairpin from her braid. Bennett worked the lock. It clicked open in seconds. Cole stared at her. "Where did you learn that?" "The cellar door locked from the outside. I picked it 47 times. She pushed the door open. After the first dozen, it got easy. Inside, the room was neat. Fanatically neat. Ida's trunk sat at the foot of the bed, locked. Her Bible on the nightstand. A coat hanging on a hook. Eleanor went to the trunk, picked the lock with the same hairpin, opened it. Papers, stacks of them, letters, documents, receipts, and there on top the guardianship papers. Eleanor pulled them out, her hands shaking. Not from arsenic this time, from rage. She read. Cole watched her face change. "What is it?" he asked. Eleanor's voice came out like ice. "She forged them. These papers say she was granted guardianship of Eleanor Ruth Dawson, minor child. But I was 23 when Samuel died. Not a minor. The judge's signature at the bottom, this is Judge Harold Wheeler. He's been dead for 2 years. I read about it in the Helena newspaper." "She used a dead judge's name?" "More than that. Look at the date. These are dated 6 months after Judge Wheeler died. She created them herself, probably bribed a clerk to file them in the county records office. But they're completely fraudulent." Cole's fist clenched. "Can you prove it?" "If we can get the courthouse records, yes. The real records will show no guardianship was ever granted. These papers are fiction. Copy them. Every word." Eleanor pulled out the paper and pencil she'd brought. Her hand flew across the page, copying the documents word for word. The fake judge's signature, the false dates, the claim that she, the grown woman of 23, had been declared incompetent and in need of supervision. She was so focused she almost didn't hear the footsteps in the hall. Cole did. "Eleanor, someone's coming." "I'm almost done." "Now, yo." She grabbed the copies, shoved the originals back in the trunk, locked it. They moved toward the door just as it started to open. Ida stepped inside, saw them. Her face went perfectly still. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Ida smiled. That razor smile, the one that said she'd been expecting this. "Well," she said softly, "breaking and entering. That's a crime, Eleanor, even for a married woman." Eleanor's blood turned to ice. "How did you know?" "That you got married this morning, Elise. I have eyes in this town. Judge Morrison's clerk is very fond of the donations I make to the church." Ida closed the door behind her. "Did you really think I wouldn't know? Did you think marriage would save you? It ends your guardianship. Legally, you have no claim to me or Margaret." Legally, Ida laughed. Oh, my dear, you still think the law matters. You think because you read a few books, you understand how the world works. But the law is for people with power, and you have none. Cole stepped between them. Get out of the way, Ida. Or what, Mr. Masterson? You'll hit me. You have a warrant for assault already. Hit a woman and you'll hang. She tilted her head. Did you tell your new husband about the arsenic, Eleanor? About how I've been feeding it to you for 2 years? About how you're dying slowly? Eleanor's breath caught. Cole went very still. Ida's smile widened. No, oh, this is delicious. You didn't tell him. And now he's married to a poisoned woman. In 6 months, maybe a year, you'll be dead, and Margaret will be mine again. You're lying, Eleanor said, but her voice shook. Am I? Check your hair. How much have you lost? Check your hands. How long have they been shaking? Check the blood you've been vomiting every morning. Ida stepped closer. I know the symptoms, dear. I've done this before. George, William. They died so slowly even the doctors thought it was natural causes. Cole's voice was deadly quiet. You're confessing to murder. I'm confessing to nothing. I'm simply having a private conversation with my daughter-in-law. Your word against mine. And who do you think a judge will believe? The respectable widow or the wanted criminal and his mad wife? Eleanor's mind raced. The arsenic, the shaking, the vomiting. It all made sense now. Not fear, poison, slow, methodical, calculated murder. And Ida had just admitted it. Cole moved fast, grabbed Ida's wrist, twisted her arm behind her back. Not hard enough to break, hard enough to control. Eleanor, go get Sheriff Boone. Now. Cole, if you assault her. I'm not assaulting her. I'm making a citizen's arrest. She just confessed to attempted murder. That's a capital crime. His eyes never left Ida's face. Isn't that right, Mrs. Dawson? Ida's smile never wavered. I said no such thing, and even if I did, it's hearsay. Not admissible in court. Maybe not, but it's enough to get an investigation started. Enough to get Eleanor examined by a doctor. Enough to test for arsenic in her system. Cole's voice dropped. And once we prove it's there, we'll exhume your previous husbands. See what we find in their bones. For the first time, Ida's mask cracked. Real fear flickered in her eyes. Eleanor saw it and smiled. You made a mistake, Ida. You told the truth. Finally. She ran, down the stairs out into the night toward the sheriff's office. Behind her in room 4 of the Redstone Hotel, Cole held a murderer who'd been playing saint for 10 years. And for the first time since Abigail left, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Standing still, fighting, not running anymore. Sheriff Boone arrived at the Redstone Hotel with Eleanor close behind his hand resting on the pistol at his hip. He took the stairs 2 at a time, Eleanor's breathless account of Ida's confession still ringing in his ears. Room 4's door stood open. Cole had Ida seated in the chair by the window, her hands visible, her posture rigid. She looked like a woman enduring an inconvenience, not a woman caught confessing to murder. Sheriff, Ida said calmly, thank goodness you're here. Mr. Masterson has assaulted me and broken into my room. I want him arrested immediately. Boone looked at Cole. That's true. I made a citizen's arrest. She confessed to poisoning Eleanor with arsenic, confessed to murdering 2 previous husbands the same way, George Pewitt and William Sutter. Ida laughed. It was a light musical sound. That's absurd. I said no such thing. Mr. Masterson broke into my room, manhandled me, and is now fabricating stories to justify his criminal behavior. She looked at Eleanor. My poor daughter-in-law is clearly unstable. She's convinced her new husband to help her with these delusions. I heard you, Eleanor said. Her voice shook, but she stepped forward. You told us about the arsenic, about George and William, about how I'd be dead in 6 months and Margaret would be yours again. Did I? How strange. I remember no such conversation. Ida's smile was serene. Perhaps you imagined it. You've been prone to hallucinations lately, all that stress. Boone rubbed his face. Cole, Eleanor, did anyone else hear this confession? No, Cole admitted, just us. Then it's her word against yours. And breaking and entering is still breaking and entering regardless of what you think you heard. We have evidence, Eleanor said quickly. She pulled out the copied guardianship papers. These documents Ida's been using to claim custody of me and Margaret. They're forgeries. The judge who supposedly signed them died 2 years before the date on the papers. Judge Harold Wheeler. You can verify that with the county records office. Boone took the copies, studied them. His expression shifted. These say you were a minor when guardianship was granted, but you were 23 when Samuel died. Exactly. The entire document is fraudulent. Ida created it to control me legally, but it has no legal standing. Ida's smile faltered for just a second. That's a copy, hardly admissible as evidence. And even if there were irregularities in the filing, that's a clerical error, not fraud. Then you won't mind if we examine the originals, Boone said. The ones in your trunk. That trunk is private property. You have no right. Ma'am, if these papers are forgeries, that's fraud and false imprisonment. I've got probable cause. Boone moved to the trunk, looked at Eleanor. You picked this lock. Yes. Mind doing it again, with me as witness? Eleanor knelt, worked the hairpin. The lock clicked. She opened the trunk. The guardianship papers sat on top exactly where she'd left them. Boone pulled them out, compared them to Eleanor's copies. These are identical, and Eleanor's right. Judge Wheeler's been dead since '79. I was at his funeral. Ida stood abruptly. This is outrageous. Those papers were filed by a county clerk in good faith. If there's an error, it's his, not mine. That clerk wouldn't happen to be your cousin, would he? Eleanor said quietly. Samuel told me once about your family and Helena, about your cousin who worked in the courthouse, about how he owed you money. The room went very still. Boone looked at Ida with new eyes. You bribed a county clerk to file false guardianship papers. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. That's a territorial crime. You can't prove that. Maybe not yet, but I can hold you while I investigate. Boone pulled out handcuffs. Puiwit Dawson, you're under arrest for suspected fraud and false imprisonment. You have the right to... Wait, Ida's voice cracked. The mask was slipping. You don't understand. That house in Helena is mine. I earned it. 3 years I took care of that ungrateful girl and her brat. 3 years of feeding them, housing them, tolerating their presence. That property is compensation for my suffering. That property belonged to Samuel Dawson, Eleanor said. It passed to me as his widow. You've been living there illegally, collecting rent that should have been mine. That's theft. Ida's control shattered. You stupid little bitch. Do you have any idea what I could have done to you? What I should have done? I was merciful. I let you live. I could have poisoned you faster. Could have made it look like an accident. But I wanted you to suffer. Wanted you to know every day that you were worthless, that you'd be and unmourned. Boone stopped moving. Did you just confess to attempted murder? Ida realized what she'd said. Her face went white. You heard her, Cole said quietly. We all heard her. I didn't mean I was speaking metaphorically. Metaphorically. Eleanor stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steel. You shoved my face into a pig trough 47 times. You locked me in a cellar for 2 weeks. You fed me arsenic for 2 years. There's nothing metaphorical about that. Boone snapped the cuffs on Ida's wrists. Ma'am, you need to stop talking. Anything you say can and will be used against you. But Ida couldn't stop. The dam had broken. 10 years of maintaining the mask, and now it was gone, and the poison underneath came pouring out. She deserved it, all of it. She was weak, pathetic, crying for her dead husband, clinging to that child like they were the only things that mattered. Samuel married me to give her a mother. And what did she do? Mourned him, refused to move on, refused to be grateful for what I gave her. You gave her nothing but pain, Cole said. I gave her the purpose, structure. Someone needed to teach her that life is suffering, that the strong survive and the weak get crushed. I was doing her a favor. Eleanor felt something break loose in her chest. All the fear, all the rage, all the years of swallowing screams. It came up like a wave. You're right, she said softly. Life is suffering, and I suffered under you for 3 years. But here's what you never understood, Ida. Suffering doesn't make you strong. Surviving it does. And I survived you. She stepped closer, close enough to see the hatred in Ida's eyes. I survived the trough. I survived the cellar. I survived the poison you fed me every single day. I survived because I had a daughter who needed me, because I had a father who taught me to read, because I had a mind that you couldn't break no matter how hard you tried. Eleanor's voice rose, years of silence broken. You called me worthless, slow, dangerous, but I read every law book in Montana Territory. I memorized property codes and guardianship statutes while you thought I was going mad in the dark. I found a way out when you made sure there was no door. I forged my own key. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't wipe them away. You wanted me to die alone and unmourned, but I'm standing here with a husband who chose me, with a daughter who's safe, with a future you can't touch, and you're going to hang, and when they do, I won't be there to watch, because you don't deserve even that much of my time. The room was silent. Ida stared at Eleanor like she was seeing her for the first time. You can't. I can. Eleanor turned to Boone. Sheriff, I want to press charges. Attempted murder, fraud, false imprisonment, theft of property. All of it. You'll need to see a doctor first. Get tested for arsenic. Then I'll see a doctor. Tonight if possible. Boone nodded. I'll send for Doc Winters. He can do a blood test check for symptoms. He looked at Ida. Ma'am, you're coming with me to the jail, and I'd advise you to get yourself a lawyer. A good one. He led Ida toward the door. She went without fighting, but her eyes never left Eleanor. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, Eleanor said calmly. It is. Doc Winters confirmed it 3 hours later. Arsenic in Eleanor's blood. Not enough to kill her yet, but enough to cause the tremors, the hair loss, the vomiting. Another 6 months at that dosage, and her organs would have started failing. You're lucky, Winters said, packing his medical bag. You stopped ingesting it just in time. The shaking will fade in a few weeks. Hair will grow back, but you'll need to be monitored. Arsenic likes to hide in the bones, can cause problems years later. But I'll live. You'll live. Winters looked at Cole. Keep her away from stress. Good food, clean water, plenty of rest. And for God's sake, keep her away from that woman. That woman's in jail, Cole said. Good. She stays there, your wife might actually make it to old age. After Winters left, Eleanor sat on the porch of the ranch house wrapped in a quilt despite the warm night. Cole sat beside her. They didn't speak for a long time. I should have known, Eleanor said finally. Should have realized it wasn't just fear making me sick. How could you have known you didn't have access to doctors? Didn't have anyone to tell you what the symptoms meant? I could have fought back sooner. Could have left earlier. You left when you could. That's what matters. Eleanor pulled the quilt tighter. Cole, what if the arsenic does cause problems later? What if I get sick, really sick? You didn't sign up for that. Cole took her hand. I signed up for you, sick or well. That's what marriage means. We've been married less than a day. You don't owe me. Stop. His voice was gentle but firm. Eleanor, listen to me. I spent 10 years running from the idea that I could matter to someone again. That I could be more than the man whose wife left, whose son grew up without him, whose anger landed him a warrant. You made me stand still, made me fight. That's worth everything. Even if I'm broken, you are not broken. And even if you were broken, things can be fixed. Or they can be beautiful in new ways. He squeezed her hand. My father used to say that a cracked pot still holds water. It just takes more care to keep it from leaking. I've got care to give. Eleanor laughed. It came out as half a sob. That's the worst metaphor I've ever heard. I'm a rancher, not a poet. Thank God for that. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars. Cole, Eleanor said quietly, when this is over, when Ida's trial is done, when we know for sure she can't hurt us anymore, I want to find Thomas. Cole went very still. What? Your son, I want to help you find him. I sent that telegram before I came here, but we never followed up. We should. He deserves to know his father's alive. Deserves to decide if he wants a relationship. Eleanor, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. You gave me a chance at a new life. Let me help you reclaim yours. Cole's eyes were wet. He didn't bother hiding it. What if he doesn't want to see me? Then we'll deal with that together. But what if he does? What if he's been waiting for you to come find him? I'm scared. I know, I'm scared too. Scared of a lot of things. But I'm learning that being scared doesn't mean you stop moving forward. It just means you hold someone's hand while you do it. Cole pulled her close. She let herself lean against him, let herself feel safe in a way she hadn't in 3 years. We're quite a pair, he murmured into her hair. A widow running from a poisoner and a widower running from his past. Maybe that's exactly what we both needed. Someone who understands running. Someone who can teach us how to stand still. You already taught me that. Then we'll teach each other. They stayed like that until the moon set and the sky began to pale with dawn. The trial took place 3 weeks later in Helena. Territorial Judge Marcus Thornton presiding. Ida had hired a lawyer from Denver, an expensive man with a silver tongue and a reputation for getting guilty clients acquitted. But the evidence was overwhelming. Doc Winters testified about the arsenic in Eleanor's blood. Margaret Hull, the mining foreman's wife, testified about selling Ida a tin of arsenic in 1879, supposedly for rats. The county clerk who'd filed the fraudulent guardianship papers broke under questioning and admitted Ida had paid him $50 to backdate the documents. The bodies of George Pwitt and William Sutter were exhumed. Both tested positive for chronic arsenic exposure. Ida's lawyer tried to argue that the deaths were coincidence, that Eleanor's illness was unrelated, that the guardianship papers were a clerical error, not fraud. But then Eleanor took the stand. She'd prepared for days. Cole had listened to her practice, her testimony, watched her write out every detail in neat, precise handwriting. She'd been terrified she'd freeze, that seeing Ida across the courtroom would silence her the way 3 years of abuse had silenced her before. She didn't freeze. She spoke for 2 hours, described every beating, every time her face was shoved into the pig trough, every day in the cellar. She recited the dates, the specific incidents, the progression of symptoms as the arsenic built up in her system. She spoke about watching her hair fall out, about the metallic taste in her food that she'd thought was fear, about the way Ida would smile while serving her dinner, knowing that every bite was poison. The courtroom was silent. Even Ida's lawyer looked sick. When Eleanor finished, Judge Thornton asked if she had anything else to add. She did. "Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "I spent 3 years believing I deserved what Ida did to me, believing that if I was just better, quieter, more obedient, she'd stop. But she never would have stopped, because it wasn't about me. It was about power, about owning another human being and watching them break." She looked directly at Ida. "But I didn't break. I bent. I survived. And now I'm here, and she's there, and the only power she has left is the power I give her by being afraid. So I'm choosing not to be afraid anymore." Eleanor turned back to the judge. "I'm asking for the maximum sentence allowed by law, not for revenge, for justice, so that no other woman ends up in a cellar reading law books by candlelight because it's the only way to survive." The jury deliberated for 30 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Judge Thornton sentenced Ida Pewitt Dawson to death by hanging for the murders of George Pwitt and William Sutter. Additional sentences for attempted murder fraud and false imprisonment to run concurrently. Execution scheduled for December 15th, 1881. Ida didn't scream, didn't cry, just smiled that razor smile one last time as they led her away. Eleanor watched her go. Cole's hand was warm in hers. Margaret sat in the gallery with Sarah Covington, too young to attend the trial, but old enough to know her mother had won. "It's over," Cole said quietly. "No." Eleanor squeezed his hand. "It's beginning." They were married again 6 weeks later, properly this time, in the Redstone Gulch Community Church with half the town in attendance. Reverend Whitley was in jail awaiting his own trial for embezzlement, so a circuit preacher from Helena performed the ceremony. Sarah Covington stood as Eleanor's attendant, Hank Morrow as Cole's best man. Margaret was flower girl wearing a new dress Eleanor had sewn herself. The child scattered petals with solemn concentration, then stood beside her mother and grinned up at Cole. "Do you, Cole Masterson, take Eleanor Ruth to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for richer or poorer, till death do you part?" "I do." No stutter. Clear as a bell. "And do you, Eleanor Ruth, take Cole to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness and in health for richer or poorer, till death do you part?" Eleanor looked at Cole, at the man who'd stood at that stagecoach and chosen to believe her when the whole town called her mad, at the man who'd held a murderer so she could run for help, at the man who'd promised the door would never be locked. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride. This kiss was different from the first, not tentative, not just a promise. This was a claiming, a choosing, a yes that meant forever. When they pulled apart, the church erupted in applause. Margaret tugged at Eleanor's dress. Mama, can I call Mr. Cole Papa now? Eleanor's throat tightened. She looked at Cole. He knelt down eye level with the child. Would you like to? Margaret nodded seriously. You're nicer than my real papa was. He loved me, but he was sad a lot. You're not sad. I'm not sad anymore, Cole said. Not since you and your mama came here. Then I'll call you Papa. Margaret threw her arms around his neck. Papa Cole. Cole held her this child who wasn't his by blood, but was becoming his by choice. Over her head, he met Eleanor's eyes. She was crying but smiling. We, she mouthed, not I. We. The word she'd been afraid to say for 3 years. The word that meant she wasn't alone anymore. That meant partnership, alliance, family, Winton. The reception was held at the ranch. Sarah Covington had organized it with help from Ruth Fenton and half a dozen other ranch wives who'd decided that Eleanor Masterson was worth knowing after all. Tables laden with food. A fiddle player from the mining camp, dancing in the yard as the sun set gold over the mountains. Eleanor danced with Cole, her new husband, her partner. He wasn't graceful, but he was steady. She stepped on his feet twice. He didn't complain. You know, he said, I never thought I'd do this again. Get married, have a family. Regret it. Not even a little. He spun her carefully. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at this dancing business. I noticed. Abigail used to complain about it, said I moved like a bull in a china shop. Eleanor smiled. Then it's a good thing I'm not Abigail. No, you're you, and that's infinitely better. The song ended. They stopped moving but didn't let go of each other. Cole, Eleanor said quietly, I think I might be falling in love with you. He went very still. You don't have to say that. I know, but it's true, not the desperate clinging love of someone who needs saving. The real kind. The kind that chooses you even when the danger's past, even when I could leave and be safe somewhere else. Eleanor, I'm scared of it, she continued. Scared that if I love you, it'll give someone power over me again. But I'm more scared of not trying, of living safe but alone. Cole cupped her face in his hands, calloused palms, gentle touch. I loved Abigail, he said, or thought I did. But looking back, I think I loved the idea of her, the family we'd build, the life we'd have. When she left, it wasn't just losing her. It was losing the future I'd planned. He paused, gathering words. But you, I don't love an idea of you. I love the woman who reads law books in cellars, who picks locks with hairpins, who stands in front of a killer and says, you don't own me anymore. I love your strength and your fear and the way you're trying so damn hard to learn what safe feels like. Cole, I'm not done, Mom. He smiled. I love the way you sing to Margaret, the way you plant vegetables like you're waging war on hunger, the way your hands shake but you pick up the pen anyway. I love you, Eleanor, not because you need me, because you chose me, because we chose each other. Eleanor kissed him, right there in the middle of the yard with half the town watching. Kissed him like he was air and she'd been drowning. When they pulled apart, she was laughing. What's funny, he asked. Nothing, everything. I'm just happy, and I forgot what that felt like. Then let me remind you every day for the rest of our lives. Deal. They danced until the stars came out, until Margaret fell asleep on a pile of blankets Annabelle clutched tight, until the guests went home and the ranch fell quiet. And that night in the house that was theirs, Eleanor Ruth Masterson fell asleep in her husband's arms and didn't dream of pig troughs or cellars or hands shoving her down. She dreamed of horses, an open sky, and a voice that said, we. Epilogue 1920. The parlor of the Circle M Ranch house was warm despite the November cold outside. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace. The house had grown over the years, additions built as the family expanded, but the original room remained heart of the home. Eleanor Ruth Masterson sat in her favorite chair, 85 years old, her hair white as snow, her hands gnarled with arthritis but still strong. A young woman sat across from her, notebook in hand, pencil poised. Mrs. Masterson, the journalist said, thank you for agreeing to this interview. The Montana Women's Historical Society is documenting the lives of territorial pioneers, and your story is unusual. Eleanor smiled. You can say it. I was nearly murdered by my mother-in-law, saved by a mail-order bride arrangement, and helped convict a serial killer using law books I'd read in a cellar. It's not your typical pioneer tale. That's one way to put it. The journalist Emily Hartford was 23, bright-eyed, eager. But what struck me when researching your life wasn't just the trial, it was everything that came after. The school you founded, the legal advocacy work, the changes you made to Montana law. Eleanor's eyes drifted to the photographs on the mantle. Cole at 70, still tall, still scarred, still steady. Margaret at 40, a teacher now with 3 children of her own. Thomas at 52, running the ranch with his sons. You want to know about the after, Eleanor said, because the trial is what people remember, but the life we built is what mattered. Exactly. Eleanor settled back in her chair. Then let me tell you about what we built. 1882, 1 year after the trial, Cole and Eleanor traveled to Portland in the spring. Thomas was 9 tall for his age, with Cole's brown eyes and Abigail's dark hair. He lived with his mother and stepfather in a neat house on Maple Street. The reunion was awkward at first. Thomas remembered Cole only in fragments, a scarred face, gentle hands, a voice that stuttered sometimes. But Cole didn't push, didn't demand recognition or love, just sat on the porch with his son and talked. About the ranch, about horses, about the war and Abigail, and the 10 years that had passed. Why didn't you come sooner, Thomas asked finally. Because I was afraid, Cole said. Afraid you'd be better off without me, that I'd ruin whatever good life your mother had given you. She told me you were dead. I know. She lied. She did, but she also kept you safe, gave you a home, made sure you went to school. That matters. Thomas looked at Eleanor, sitting quiet on the porch swing. Is she your new wife? She is, Eleanor. This is my son, Thomas. Thomas, this is Eleanor, and Margaret hiding behind her mama's skirt, that's my stepdaughter. Margaret peeked out, shy. Thomas smiled at her. Hi, Margaret. Hi. They spent a week in Portland. By the end, Thomas had agreed to spend summers at Circle M, to learn ranching, to know his father, to decide for himself what kind of relationship they'd have. It wasn't perfect. There were hard conversations, silences, moments when Thomas's anger at being left behind surfaced like a wound reopening. But they worked through it, year by year, summer by summer. By the time Thomas was 18, he called Cole Pa without hesitation. By 20, he'd moved to Montana, permanently built a cabin on Circle M land, married a girl from Helena. By 30, he was running half the ranch operation with 2 sons of his own learning to ride before they could walk. 1885. The school Eleanor opened the Crawford Masterson Academy in a converted barn on Circle M property. 1 room, 20 desks, children from ranching families and mining camps. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, but also law, property rights, contract basics, how to protect yourself when someone tried to take advantage. She taught girls and boys equally, told them that knowledge was power, that education was the key to every lock. The school grew. By 1890, there were 3 rooms, 2 additional teachers, 50 students. By 1900, Eleanor had trained 12 women to teach in rural Montana schools, had lobbied the territorial legislature to require basic legal education in all public schools, had written a textbook, Property Law for the Common Citizen, used in schools across the territory. Margaret became a teacher herself, taking over the academy when Eleanor's arthritis made daily teaching too difficult. You changed my life, Mama, Margaret said once. You showed me that women could do more than survive. They could build. Eleanor had cried. Happy tears, the kind that came from knowing your pain had purpose. 1895. The advocacy. Eleanor became an advocate for women escaping abusive situations. She helped draft Montana's first domestic violence protection statute, testified before the territorial legislature about the need for women's property rights. She helped women file for divorce when their husbands beat them, helped widows claim property that relatives tried to steal, helped young girls escape arranged marriages to men who wanted to hurt them. She never forgot what it felt like to be trapped, never forgot the cellar, the trough, the feeling of having no voice. So she gave other women their voices back. By 1900, she'd helped more than 60 women escape situations like hers, some with legal documents she drafted herself, some with safe houses she organized, some just with the knowledge that they weren't alone, weren't crazy, weren't deserving of abuse. "You're a hero," one woman told her. "No," Eleanor said. "I'm just someone who remembers what helpless feels like and refuses to let anyone else feel that way if I can help it." 1905. The ranch Circle M grew from 2,400 acres to 5,000. Cole and Thomas ran cattle and horses, with Margaret's husband Jim managing the finances. The original cabin became a guest house. The main house sprawled rooms added for children and grandchildren who visited constantly. Sunday dinners were loud, chaotic, full of laughter. 3 generations around one table, sometimes 4 as great-grandchildren started arriving. Cole, 65, still worked the ranch every day, still rode Bishop, now elderly and gentle, still stuttered sometimes, especially when he was tired, but nobody cared. Eleanor, 70, taught part-time, wrote articles for women's journals, tended her garden with the same fierce determination she'd once used to survive. They'd built something neither had imagined that day at the stagecoach. Not just a ranch, a legacy. "You know," Cole said one evening on the porch, their ritual spot, "I never thanked you." "For what?" "For making me stand still. For teaching me that running doesn't solve anything." Eleanor took his hand. "You taught me the same thing. That standing still isn't giving up. It's deciding you're worth fighting for." "We're quite a pair. The best kind." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset over land they'd built together. 1918, the loss. Cole died on a Tuesday morning in March. Peacefully in his sleep, Eleanor's hand in his. He was 78. They'd been married 37 years. Eleanor held him as his breathing slowed, then stopped. She didn't cry at first, just sat there memorizing his face, the scars she'd traced 1,000 times, the hands that had never once been raised in anger. "Thank you," she whispered to him, "for seeing me, for choosing me, for teaching me what love without fear feels like." She kissed his forehead. Then she cried. The funeral was huge. Ranchers and teachers and women Eleanor had helped over the years. Thomas and his family, Margaret and hers, grandchildren and great-grandchildren who'd known Cole as the gentle grandfather who told stories and taught them to ride. They buried him on Circle M land on a hill overlooking the valley. Eleanor chose the headstone. "Cole Masterson, 1840 to 1918. He taught me to stand still, 1920. The interview. Emily Hartford looked up from her notes, eyes wet. "Mrs. Masterson, that's beautiful. But I have to ask, after everything Ida did to you, after the arsenic and the abuse, how did you move past it? How did you not let it define you?" Eleanor was quiet for a long moment. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft, gentle, covering the land in white. "Who says I moved past it?" she said finally. "I didn't. I still flinch sometimes when doors close suddenly. Still count to 10 before speaking when I'm nervous. Still have nightmares about cellars. But you built all this. The school, the advocacy work, the family. I built it because of the cellar, not in spite of it." Eleanor's voice was firm. "Trauma doesn't disappear. It becomes part of you. But you get to choose what part. Does it make you smaller, or does it make you fierce? And you chose fierce. I chose survival, and then I chose to help others survive. And then somewhere along the way, I realized survival isn't the same as living. Living is what came after. With Cole, with my children, with every woman I helped who got to walk away from her own Ida." Emily wrote quickly, trying to capture every word. "What would you say to women today who are trapped the way you were?" she asked. Eleanor leaned forward. "I'd say you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not deserving of what's being done to you. And there is a way out, even if you can't see it yet, even if it's dangerous. Staying is dangerous too. Ida was killing me slowly. If I'd stayed, I'd have been dead by 28. Instead, I'm 85 with 4 children, 9 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, and a legacy that will outlive me." Eleanor smiled. "That's my revenge, not her death, my life. I didn't just survive Ida, I outlived her. I outloved her. I outbuilt her. And 50 years later, people know my name and have forgotten hers." "What about the arsenic? Did it cause long-term health problems?" "Some. Arthritis mostly. Weakness in my bones. But Doc Winters was right. I stopped ingesting it in time. The body heals if you give it the chance. And your daughter, Margaret, Eleanor's face softened. Margaret's 66 now. She runs the academy, has 3 children of her own, all teachers. She married a good man, had a good life, never saw her mother's face shoved into a pig trough. That's what matters. And Thomas Cole's son, Thomas is 72. He runs Circle M with his grandsons. 4 generations on this lands now. He mourned Cole deeply. They'd made peace with those lost years, became true father and son. Emily flipped to a new page. Can I ask about the final confrontation in the hotel room? What about it? You said Ida confessed, just spilled everything. After years of careful planning, why would she do that? Eleanor's smile had teeth. Because I was in her room, in her space, touching her things. For 3 years, she'd controlled every aspect of my life. And in that moment, I was violating her control. It enraged her, made her sloppy. So you deliberately provoked her. I deliberately gave her the chance to be herself, to drop the mask. And when she did, Sheriff Boone heard every word. That's brilliant. That's survival. I'd studied her for 3 years, knew her patterns, her weaknesses, her need to assert dominance. I used it against her. Emily sat back. Mrs. Masterson, you're extraordinary. No, I'm ordinary. That's the point. Eleanor's voice was passionate now. I'm not special. I'm not uniquely strong or brave. I'm just a woman who decided dying scared was worse than fighting scared. Any woman can do what I did. They just need to know it's possible. Is that why you agreed to this interview? Yes, because if one woman reads this and thinks, maybe I can survive too, then it's worth it. Eleanor walked Emily to the door as the interview concluded. The house was full of life. Margaret's daughter playing piano in the parlor. Thomas's grandson reading by the fire. The smell of bread baking in the kitchen. Thank you, Emily said, for sharing your story. Thank you for listening. One more question, if I may. What happened to Ida? I know she was executed, but Eleanor's face went hard. She hanged on December 15th, 1881. I didn't attend. I was busy planting a garden where the pig trough used to be. Roses, if you're wondering, red ones. They bloom every summer. You planted beauty over the ugliness. I planted proof that I survived. That's better than beauty. That's victory. Emily left as the snow fell harder. Eleanor stood on the porch wrapped in a quilt watching the white world. She thought about Cole, about the way he'd stood at that stagecoach and chosen to believe her, about his hands gentle even when holding a killer, about the way he'd stuttered her name on their wedding night, Eleanor, full of wonder that she was his. She thought about Margaret safe and happy and teaching the next generation, about Thomas who'd forgiven his father and built a life on this land, about the 63 women she'd helped escape their own Idas. She thought about herself, about the girl who'd had her face in the pig trough, about the woman who'd read law books by candlelight, about the wife, mother, grandmother, teacher, advocate she'd become. The door opened behind her. Margaret emerged carrying 2 cups of tea. Mama, it's cold. Come inside. In a minute, sweetheart. Margaret sat beside her, handed her the tea. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow cover Circle M in white. Mama, Margaret said quietly, do you ever wish things had been different, that you'd never met Ida? Eleanor considered the question. If I'd never met Ida, I wouldn't have needed to escape, wouldn't have answered Cole's advertisement, wouldn't have come to Montana. So I wouldn't have this life, this family, this legacy. Eleanor sipped her tea. Ida tried to destroy me. Instead, she inadvertently gave me everything I needed to build something beautiful. I don't forgive her, but I'm grateful for what I became in spite of her. That's grace, Mama. No, sweetheart, that's survival. Grace is what I give myself for taking so long to fight back. For the 3 years I stayed when I could have looked for a way out sooner. You stayed for me. I did, and I'd do it again. You were worth every moment in that cellar. Margaret leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. I love you, Mama. I love you too, baby girl. They sat until the cold drove them inside, until the family gathered for dinner, until the house filled with warmth and laughter and the sound of children who'd never known fear. Eleanor Ruth Masterson died in her sleep on a winter morning in 1922, 3 days after her 87th birthday. She passed peacefully in the bed she'd shared with Cole in the house they'd built together. They found her with a smile on her face, and on the nightstand beside her, a photograph from her wedding day. Young, bright-eyed, standing beside a tall man with a scarred face and steady eyes. On the back in her handwriting, "We chose each other." That made all the difference. The final image, the Circle M Ranch, still stands. 5,000 acres of Montana grassland running cattle and horses, now in its sixth generation of family management. The original cabin is a museum. The Crawford Masterson Academy is a K-12 school teaching law and letters to children across 3 counties. In the yard where the pig trough once sat, a garden blooms. Red roses, thick and wild, climbing over a stone marker. Eleanor Ruth Masterson, 1835 to 1922. She found her voice in the darkness and used it to light the way for others. And beside it, a second stone. Cole Masterson, 1840 to 1918. He taught her to stand still. She taught him to hope again. The wind moves through the grass. The horses graze peacefully. Children's laughter echoes from the school, and somewhere in the house on the hill, a woman's voice can almost be heard. Not crying, not screaming, not begging, speaking, strong, clear, unbroken. "My name is Eleanor Ruth Masterson, and I survived.